Today we're going to be talking about Piaget's theory of cognitive development. I wanted to begin by talking to you a little bit about who Jean Piaget is. He is a Swiss psychologist who lived from 1896 to 1980. He began studying the behavior of animals as a child and eventually moved on to studying people. His early studies were about why children failed reasoning tests, but he eventually became interested in the study of children's intelligence and the development of their thinking processes. As we begin talking about Piaget's theories, there are some important terms that you'll need to know. These include cognition, schema, adaptation, assimilation, and accommodation. Our first term is cognition, which is the ability to take in information, process it, store it, and retrieve it. For example, you might have a friend who tells you about a cow they saw on the side of the road. Your brain stores this information until you pass another cow later on in the day, and you think of the story that your friend told you, then retrieving the information. Our next word is schema. Schema is thinking about and organizing ideas and concepts depending on one's level of cognitive development. We'll address the levels of cognitive development later, but one example of a schema is that of farm animals. It could include a cow, a horse, and a pig. Another example is that of a dog. It can include multiple breeds. Another important term is adaptation. It includes one's capacity to adjust to surrounding environmental conditions. For example, someone who moves from Guatemala to America is going to have to get used to an entirely new culture. One of the biggest changes would be the change in language. Now we come to assimilation. Assimilation is the taking in of new information and the resulting integration into the schema. For example, say we have a small child who has a pet dog. He knows that his dog is a dog. One day, him and his mom go on a walk and they run across another dog. His mom tells him that this is also a dog, and now his schema of a dog consists of these two dogs. A week later, the same thing happens with a different dog, and now his schema of a dog includes all three types of dogs. Our final term is accommodation, which is the process by which children change their perceptions and actions in order to think using higher, more abstract levels of cognition. If we stick with the dog example, we may have another child whose idea of a dog is an animal with 4 legs, which could include a cow and a horse. As he grows older, he may learn that a dog is a small animal with 4 legs and a fluffy tail, which could include a cat and a fox. As he grows older, he may again develop more of an idea of what a dog is and isn't. A dog does not include a horse, a cow, a fox, or a cat, but it does include various breeds, which may have different features. Now we come to what Piaget is most well known for, his 4 stages of cognitive development. Next is the pre-operational stage, from ages 2 to 7. Barriers to development include egocentrism, centration, and irreversibility, while developing cognitive abilities include classification, seriation, and conservation. Egocentrism is the lack of ability to see something from another person's perspective. Children in this stage often lack empathy and think only of their own feelings. Centration is the inability to consider multiple aspects of an object. For example, a child may say that the circle, star, and triangle are all the same thing because they are all yellow, ignoring the fact that they are different shapes. Irreversibility is the lack of ability to understand relationships that go both ways. For example, if you have 2 sets of brothers named John and Jamie, John may know that Jamie is his brother. However, when he meets Jamie's teacher, who says, "I didn't know Jamie had a brother," John may say something along the lines of, "Jamie doesn't have a brother, I have a brother." Children in this stage develop skills in classification, seriation, and conservation. Classification is the ability to organize things according to specific variables. For example, even though these triangles are different colors and sizes, a child in this stage would be able to recognize them all as triangles. The same goes for the rectangles, which also have various heights and widths. Seriation is the ability to place things in order according to a variable. For example, a child in this stage would be able to place these from biggest to smallest. Conservation is the ability to recognize that while one variable of an object may change, another stays the same. So as a child progresses throughout this stage, they would be able to recognize that pouring water from a short, wide glass into a tall glass does not change the amount of water. Now we come to the concrete operations stage, from ages 7 to 11. During this stage, children overcome the previous barriers to logical thinking. They learn to use symbols to represent real-world events. If you think back to elementary school, this is when you were first introduced to word problems in math. So, given the problem, Sarah has 3 shirts and Jane has 5. How many are there total? A child in this stage would be able to recognize that this can be represented by the equation 5 plus 3 equals 8. However, the focus is still on concrete issues, not ideas. A child in this stage would struggle to have an in-depth conversation about values such as justice, equality, and liberty. The final stage is formal operations, from ages 12 to 16. During this stage, children learn to identify multiple variables that affect a situation, analyze the effects of one variable on another, and use hypothetical deductive reasoning, which is evaluating many possible relationships to arrive at a logical conclusion. If you think back to the world of math, this is often when you begin to use algebraic expressions with x and y variables, or look at graphs, again with x and y variables. In the world of English, you may begin to be reading books such as To Kill a Mockingbird and discussing themes such as justice, discrimination, and innocence. These discussions can begin to be had on a more abstract level. A less discussed study of Piaget's had to do with morality and whether it is intention-based or result-based. In this study, Piaget told children 2 stories. The first was of a boy who accidentally broke 3 vases. The second was of a boy who intentionally broke 1 vase. He then asked the children which was worse and which child deserved more punishment. According to him, children under the age of 5 could not compare the 2 stories. Children ages 6 to 9 believed that the boy who broke more vases should be punished worse, and the boy who broke the vase intentionally should be punished less. Children ages 10 and above believed the reverse, that the boy who intentionally broke a vase deserved a worse punishment. However, some people believed that this study was too confusing for the children, so they recreated the study but simplified it. They told a single story instead of 2 stories, and rather than giving the children set options, they used a rating scale to represent how bad the crime was. These researchers also used visual representations. They found that children as young as 3 could understand that the boy who intentionally broke the vase deserved a worse punishment. However, both Piaget and these other researchers found that children developed results-based morality before intentions-based morality. Although Piaget's studies have greatly impacted the world of psychology, they also have a few problems. The first one is that the majority of his observations are based on his own children. This does not allow for much diversification. They also study the average child. However, who is that really? That could include children from many races and many socioeconomic classes. Finally, it ignores the effects of social interaction and focuses solely on the children's age. Other issues with Piaget's study had to do with object permanence and egocentricity. Piaget's study suggested that children didn't begin to understand object permanence until they were about 2 years old. However, when another researcher did the study in a manner that required less muscular coordination, he found that children indicated an understanding of object permanence as early as 3.5 months. Egocentricity was another area in which Piaget's study seemed to overcomplicate things. When he performed his study, he had children sit on one side of a table looking at a set of mountains. He placed a doll somewhere else on the table and showed children images of the mountains and asked what they thought the doll saw. Children most often selected their own perspective. However, when the study was redone using a set of barriers instead of mountains, and children were asked to place a doll on the table somewhere where a toy police officer would not be able to see her, 90% of children ages 3.5 to 5 were able to answer the question correctly. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed learning about Piaget and his studies of cognitive development. Thanks for listening.